Thank you all for being here. I'm gonna pass the floor to Cynthia in a moment to go over some of these mindful art techniques. And next week will be a normal Sunday Sangha where we're going to be practicing teaching together and all those types of things, practicing teaching, connecting with one another. But this one will be a special Sunday Sangha that will be specifically dedicated to mindful art. So, Cynthia, do you want to take over?
Yeah, thank you for having me, everyone. I'm really excited today to share mindful art and meditation, a practice mixed together that can be really lovely for your own personal practice. And then also, you can integrate it into your meditation teaching as well. So really kind of the time together we're going to have, I'm going to share a little bit about the practice itself, some of the background, the frameworks of the practice, and that'll be maybe 10-ish minutes or so. And then a large amount of our time is going to be in practice together. So if you just want to have a blank sheet of paper or an unlined art journal, and then ideally a black pen. And if you have something to color with, so that could be colored pencils, markers, crayons, watercolors. The media doesn't really matter as much, and I'll talk more about that with the practice. But what I love about it is it's super accessible. So you can do it. We teach this all the way from preschool up to like 80 plus years, and it can be integrated into your classes really easily because you don't need a lot of supplies. So I'm going to switch over and share my screen to show a presentation with some of the initial parts of the practice. So I just sent over that request and I'll share my screen here in a second. And I'd love to hear while I'm waiting for that to come up, if you have a meditation practice that is really solid in your practice right now that you're exploring. I'd love to hear that in the chat. And then also, if you have a background at all with the arts, whether you play and dabble or if you've taught or experimented before, I'd love to hear that too in the chat if you feel comfortable sharing, just so I can kind of get a sense of who's here and then I can help tailor today's session also. Okay, perfect. And then are you able to see my screen currently? Oh,
Yes,
in the
we can see your screen.
perfect. Thank you. Perfect. So I want to make a kind of a bold statement before we start. And that's that I think and believe that mindful art and journaling can change your life. And I say that because it's changed my life and a lot of the students that I've worked with. And probably as many of you have already experienced how deeply transformative meditation can be. So this is really just another way that another tool in your meditation box that you can experiment with the practice. So I kind of already went over this. This is just the flow for today. And this particular workshop I'm sharing, I created about a year ago. It was in celebration of we had about 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you want to find us, we're at mindfulcreativemuse.com. But I want to share just briefly about me because I know I'm new to many of you. So I'm based in Colorado in the US. I have a sweet 19-year-old Siamese cat. And when I'm not teaching mindful art and meditation, I love other creative practices like dancing and singing. But I want to share how I came into these practices and what the practice is, some of the benefits, and then we'll do the practice together. And then I'll check the chat as well, too, just to get a deeper sense of you also. So I initially started, I would say I've always created art, and I started practicing meditation and yoga in 2003. And prior to that, I was having anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and I started to discover painting happy trees with Bob Ross. And I mention that because I feel like he's one of the original contemporary mindful art teachers, where he gives a lot of permission with the creative practice. It's very nourishing, supportive, and he focuses a lot on the present moment. So he brings in cues about hearing the brush strokes on the canvas, feeling the brush in your hand, noticing the sensation when you're cleaning the brush. So I feel like he really was teaching a lot of mindfulness and meditation without calling it that. I was treated for cancer in my late 20s, and that's when I really deepened into this practice that you're seeing on the screen, which is called Soul Collage, and it combines mindfulness, intuitive collage, and writing practices. And I say all of that to say, it led me to my deeper practice that I'm going to share with you today. But ultimately, mindful art is something anybody can do. And I find that it's another way into meditation. So I'll kind of talk about that as well. And I just love, I'll make sure I read through all of the chats later as well. But I'm seeing a lot of background in the arts, which is great. Wim Hof for breath work, mindfulness of the body, breath, and senses. We're going to do a lot today on the body, breath, and senses. So that's great. Um, Paying for your daughter's art degree. Sure, that counts. We'll count that, Shane. Um, nice. So dabbling in art, yoga, perfect. Yeah, and so digital art, anything I share today, you can also do digitally as well if you're using like an iPad or on the computer. So I just want to share that this kind of journey, it led me on to a lot of different certifications, but now we've created and share 4 internationally accredited teacher trainings in mindful art and meditation. Some are for adults, some are geared towards kids. And I don't say that to toot my own horn. I mostly say it to share that I feel like there is this curiosity and I think this need in the world around meditation and mindfulness. And I've heard from a lot of people that I've worked with where they say they can't meditate or it hurts their body to sit in one position or they can't clear their thoughts. And that, as you all already know, isn't the foundation of mindfulness or meditation, that instead we can find ways that we can return back to the present moment. And that I believe that meditation can be fun. So we can meditate and practice mindfulness while walking or cooking or doing dishes, but also while making art. And we're going to go through some practices today. The other thing I hear people say sometimes is that I can't meditate or I can't make art because I don't have time. And a lot of the practices that I'm going to be sharing with you today can be done in 1 to 5 minutes. Of course, they can also be done if you have a 10 minutes or an hour, or if you want to do a 3 hour session. But it's something that can be really easily integrated into your family life, your personal life, your professional life. And then I also believe mindful art equals connection. So mindful art for me is a way I can connect with myself in the present moment, which allows me to show up in the world in the way that I most ideally want to, bringing my best self forward. And so I can connect with others also. So I want to share what mindful art is because I've kind of talked about it, but I haven't really defined it yet. So really, it's just combining mindfulness, tuning into the present moment with as much non-judgmental awareness as possible, compassion for ourselves, and as Kevin so beautifully named, just returning back to that noticing and combining that with really simple art practices. A lot of what I share are art journaling, some watercolor, some doodling. So the focus is on the process, not the final product, although many of the people I work with also love the art they end up making. But it's a different shift in focus, which can take pressure off and can also help us return back to the present moment. So these are just some of the things I've here that I've already mentioned, but these practices are especially good, I've found, for teachers, meditation teachers, yoga teachers, therapists, and really anyone wanting to deepen into the practice. So I mentioned a couple of these already, but the other thing that I've noticed that this can really help support is if someone is feeling anxious or stressed out, and any sort of mindfulness or meditation practice can help support that. This is just another way in. But also, if anyone is ever feeling creatively blocked, or even if you, I think sometimes when we think creative, we think art, like art and painting and drawing, but creative also can be coming up with ideas and solutions or cooking or gardening. And so these practices can just be a way to also move through blocks that we're feeling in general in our lives. And I find that it can also spark more inspiration for the practices we're doing on the page and also off the page in our own practice and out in the world. So some of the benefits that they've found, and really this is across the board with mindfulness and meditation as well, is that it can help us to manage stress with that self-compassion, to be kinder to ourselves. to feel, be, and notice your emotions. So, we're going to go through some different layers today of noticing the body experience, noticing our breath, our senses, but also our thoughts and emotions. And I'm going to share some prompts as well where you can start to express that on the page. And there's something I find that's really fascinating that starts to happen when we have this visual outside of ourselves. It almost is like witness consciousness, where we can notice who is the me that is talking right now, that there's kind of that subtle separation that happens on the page as well. And so I found and have found with a lot of students that we can have some kind of aha moments and breakthroughs because there is that slight separation in that moment. And then, so I just want to share a little bit the three-part framework for this practice, and then we're going to dive right into doing the practice together. So if you were to go to like a traditional art class, and some of you here mentioned you explore the arts, so you might have experienced this. If you were to go to a traditional art class and the focus is solely on technique, sometimes people might start to feel frustrated because you're comparing your work to other people, or you feel like you're noticing a strong inner critic, so judging what you're doing, feeling like what you're making isn't good enough or that you're not good enough. And again, some of these other thoughts of what I see as part of the inner critic of saying I don't have time or I'm not creative enough. And instead, the sole practice of mindful art and meditation at the foundation is mindfulness. And by having that non judgmental awareness with compassion and curiosity tied into our creative practice, I've found that it often can help us to feel more present, more relaxed, really coming into more of a balanced place with our nervous system. And many of you, I'm actually curious if any of you have heard of flow state. I know it's talked about so much now in the last 10 years or so, but it was created by two psychologists. And kind of the sweet spot they found with flow states is that it's something that is interesting enough that keeps your attention so you don't get bored and kind of check out, but not too difficult where you then want to stop and give up. So it's kind of that finding that sweet spot. And we've found with mindful art and meditation that a lot of these practices can help people drop into a flow state and also into kind of an alpha theta wave state with the brain, depending on the practice. And I found typically the more that you do this practice, similar to a meditation practice, let's say you're doing mindfulness meditation, the more your practice deepens. And also with this practice, you also have more and more visual art samples and examples that you can then continue to expand upon, like noticing patterns or certain emotions that are coming up again and again. You'll see that on the page, and it's like that mirror reflection that can be really inspiring too, which is fun. And then this is kind of the last part of the practice that isn't always included, but I often include it. And for me, it's kind of the secret sauce that I love about the practice is meaning making. So I mentioned a little bit earlier around noticing our thoughts and our emotions, but having specific prompts that we can start to express that and still holding it with that non-judgmental awareness and then returning back to the present moment. It just really helps deepen the practice, I've found, and it can lead to some really interesting insights and just personal growth in general. So that's kind of the three-part foundation of the practice. I just always like to mention it. And today, because we don't have a lot of time, we're going to go through a couple of different practices. We'll go through breath doodles and body scan drawing meditations. These are just a couple of others that are included, but there's kind of a wide variety. So I just wanted to give you a little visual of that. And then, so I'm going to switch back over my screen so you can see my tabletop so I can guide us through it. And I want to mention this workbook now in the chat because I always forget later. So if you want more prompts for the practice, writing prompts as well as art prompts, you can download this workbook. You don't have to sign up for my email list unless you want to. So it's totally optional. It truly is just a gift for your practice. I'm going to switch over to my tabletop so we can be in the practice together for pretty much the rest of the time. I'll leave a little bit of time at the end for Q&A and some group sharing, but I want to make sure we have a lot of time to meditate together creatively. So I'm going to switch my tabletop over. and I'll guide us through this. So the first couple that we're going to explore are breath doodles, and I mentioned the word, but I didn't really say what that is. So breath doodles really are combining mindfulness with the breath, and then actually tracing our breath on the page. So having that visual representation of our breath in the moment. And so for this, you just want to have a pen or a pencil. It doesn't really matter. As long as it works. I often seem to grab pens and pencils that don't work right away. So I'm going to be starting on the left side of the page because I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, it might feel more comfortable to start on the other side of the page. And you might want to watch for the first breath or two and then join in whenever you're feeling comfortable. The kind of key part that I like to do before even beginning the practice is just starting to drop in. So I like to make contact with the page, noticing the sound as I moved my hand on the page, noticing the texture and temperature, and then even feeling how softly or firmly you're holding your pen or pencil in your hand. And then just starting to notice your breath. You don't need to change your breath here, but just noticing where your breathing is in this moment. And then as you start to come across your next inhalation, we want to start in the neutral center part of the page. And as you start to inhale, we'll be moving upward on the inhalation and downward on the exhalation. And I'll talk about some different key parts as we go through this practice. I encourage you, if you feel comfortable, to follow your own breath, not my marks on the page. And you can always pause and just breathe and follow along with my marks as well if you prefer. So inhaling and moving upward, and exhaling, moving down the page. And seeing as you do this, if you can still notice perhaps the sounds of your pen moving on the page, continuing to be aware of the texture, feeling the paper under your hand. And seeing if you can, as closely as possible, trace your breath on the page. So allowing your breath to be the beginning point, not the marks. You'll notice there's this natural pause between our inhalation and our exhalation. That's when you'll be rounding around the corners. You can also choose an anchor point as you do this. So sometimes I like to notice on the wobbliness of the line. It might be that you're choosing sound as an anchor point in addition to your breath, perhaps smells in the room. And similar to any other meditation practice, if you notice thoughts coming in, judgments, or distractions, simply naming that perhaps as thoughts and returning back to your breath and the line on the page. Noticing if you can have a curiosity to this new practice, just seeing how it unfolds in each moment for you now. You can also count the breath here. So if you'd like, you can inhale and count to 4 and exhale and count to 4 as an example. Perhaps noticing how that changes your experience if you do that. We'll take one more breath here together wherever you are. Whenever your next exhalation completes, you can just stop with the line work and noticing what's on your page. This will look different for each of us, and we could do this practice on the hour every hour, and it will absolutely change. So I want to mention a couple of things about the practice you might notice, and then also hear from you. I'd be curious what you might have noticed in your own practice, since this is a new variation for a breathing practice for you. So I'd love to hear in chat what you might have noticed. There's no right or wrong answer at all. I'm just curious about your experience. And I'll talk about a couple things that you may notice visually on the page. So sometimes what I found, so today my breath was pretty even on this once I kind of dropped in a little bit more. I find as I'm teaching it, because I also am pacing speaking with the practice, that often can happen. Sometimes you might notice a natural cascading downward with your lines that may start to happen when you have a longer exhalation than inhalation, which can be a sign that you're starting to drop into a parasympathetic state or a rest and digest state. Here, you can notice I had kind of this blip, and I actually had a distracting thought. And so I always find that so interesting how I can visually see that on the page as it happens. And so this will look different for everyone. This is one of about 20 different breath doodle practices. I'm going to share another one with you, but each one is shaped slightly differently. And the shape and the cues and prompts help us focus on our breath in different ways, as well as sometimes our thoughts and emotions. So it can be very different, which is really fun. So I'm noticing in the chat, I just want to check in. So I see Shane saying you have a long exhale. So absolutely fascinating. I'm a very visual person, and I've never seen this kind of visual representation of the breath before. Love this practice. Good. I'm so glad. Um, I love it. It was easier to bring back and forth every second I had a thought. Yeah, I what I notice is that for me, it's interesting how each time it'll change. Like sometimes it'll be the wobbliness of the line or feeling the texture of the page under my hand or the temperature. I have different cue points typically in addition to the breath that really help bring me back to this particular practice. And I've heard from a lot of students that this visual, not only the visual practice, but also the physical movement of the hand and arm can help us to return back to the present moment. And sometimes you might notice when you're doing smaller lines, you're using mostly your hands and fingers, but as you start moving on the page, you use your whole arm. And I just find it so fascinating what that is meaning for our body. So how close together should the lines be? Yeah, they don't. Oh, I see that as more of a question and then letting go. Yeah, however it comes out is perfect. And I love that as a reminder to let go. So Graham's mentioning had a little less paper to work with. Yeah, so that can change the experience too, depending on the size of the paper. And then you can always go back over the lines. So you can turn the page, you can continue to make marks over the previous ones. So I played with some color in the up and down sections. Nice. And the color changes pretty across the page. Nice. So fun. Good. So I'm so glad. I'm just going to kind of skim over. So relaxing, felt so good to notice the hand. Yeah, so this is so Stacey's mentioning trying this out with third, fourth, and fifth graders. The breath doodle practices especially are really great to do with younger ages. You can for kiddos, you can even have them place their hand down, and then the adult can kind of trace the hand. So as you move up one finger, it's inhaling down for the exhale, and then they can always color in the handprint or something like that later. So that can be really fun. Um, Perfect. Yeah, and absolutely your kiddos can join you for this. I'll share a couple of other ways you can modify as well. Nice. So I'm going to come back to the page. I'll share another practice with you. Yeah, absolutely. For kids and for elderly. The nice part too is that so that soul collage practice I mentioned, sometimes that can be hard on the hand if you're, let's say, using scissors. So you can always tear the pages and use X-Acto knives or other ways. But there's always kind of similar to yoga, there's always a way that you can modify the practices, which I always share in more in depth in some of my online offerings. But so we're going to switch the page now to vertical and still continuing with a pen for this practice or just something to write with. We'll move on to color for the next practice. But this one focuses on the breath still and the body, but this one also starts to integrate in noticing and visually kind of marking our thoughts. And so this practice I call highline. And actually, I created this because I used to have a partner that did highline and slackline, where you're basically like tightrope walking. And he used to always say you're either on the line or you're not, meaning anytime his focus or attention where he wasn't in the present moment, he would then fall off of the tightrope. And so that's what inspired this practice for me. And so similarly, we're going to start by making a line on the page. This time we'll go vertically. And we're just going to start moving the line and perhaps noticing the wobbliness again, still keeping awareness of all of our senses and our breath, although we're not moving with our breath here. And as you notice a thought, and I'll kind of demonstrate this first, but if you notice a thought, like I just had a thought, I'm doing partner dancing later today. So I'm going to make a mark to the right hand side to indicate a forward thought, something about the future. Let's say, as an example, you have a thought about something yesterday that happened, you'd move towards the left. And if you have a thought where you're not even really quite sure if it's forward thinking or past thinking, you just notice that you weren't here in the present moment, you can make some sort of mark. And I tend to just kind of make a circle because at the end it tends to look like birch trees. So that's why I choose the circle shape. So this one is really, I won't be guiding it as much. We're just going to be noticing how much are we here on the line in the present moment, and how much are our thoughts pulling us away, literally, in forward thinking or backward thinking. And as best you can, not having any judgment about that, but just noticing what's happening for you in the moment. And you can go at different speeds moving down the page, whatever helps you to feel most present in this moment. You can also consciously choose an anchor here. So, whether that be how softly or firmly you're holding the pen, your feet on the ground, your breath, the page. And noticing also if you have any thoughts about the practice, noticing if your inner critic comes up at all. and seeing if you can offer compassion to yourself and then returning back to the simple practice on the page. And then, similar to the other practice, this is one that you can do for 1, 2, or 5 minutes. You can continue this for a really long time. You can always come back to the same page and continue to add lines, or you can continue on a new sheet every time. So the what I love about a lot of mindful art and meditation practices is that there's the core foundation and prompt, and then so you have that container that you're held within for the practice. And then also there's a lot of flexibility and permission and a lot of space. So there's not, that you have to do it in a particular way, which I find very freeing to really focus on the practice. So for me, I often notice with this practice, I tend to um, slow down and have more space in my thoughts as I do this practice. Not always, although I tend to kind of notice that trend. And sometimes I'm curious just to notice, oh, interesting, I have a lot of forward thoughts right now or a lot of past thoughts. But really choosing an anchor in addition to the practice is what I find can help me to really stay on the line in the present moment. So I'm going to pause again. I'd love to just hear each of the breath doodle practices is very different and can resonate in different ways, and you might notice different things. So I'd love to just kind of check in again and see what do you notice, what did you notice with this practice, and if you have any questions about the practice as well. And I'll check over on the chat. And no pressure, no need to share if you don't want to. Yes, I'm seeing a lot about kiddos in the chat. That's so fun. Nice. So Robin's noticing that the line itself went a lot more slowly than my example. Can I clarify what kinds of anchors we can choose from? Yeah, so really kind of similar to Kevin's really beautiful opening for us today of being aware of all of our different senses. I find for me that I tend to, especially with these types of breath doodle practices, I tend to lean towards noticing the wobbliness of the line or the texture of the page under my hand or my breath. Those are ones that I very often notice, although you could very easily notice the sounds in the room as you're doing this practice, noticing if you have any certain flavor in your mouth, noticing the smells around you. So, really, kind of, I like to choose different anchor points based on our senses. And the more you can choose it tied into the practice you're doing itself, I find the easier it is to stay focused here on the page. So, I'm noticing. Let's see. So Carol's mentioning, oh, really enjoying the experience. Easier for me to notice little sneaky muted thoughts. Yes, absolutely. A little restless in between and not sure why. Thoughts reduced though. Nice. A similar exercise with Rapid Recharge Lab. Oh, I've never heard of that. That's interesting. Out of burnout and into well-being. Yes. I find really anything. So, one thing I really love about mindful art and meditation practices is they're just really supportive, nourishing self care practices. And especially as practitioners, one thing I notice with yoga teachers very often is I have so many friends, and I used to teach yoga very consistently for about 6 years. The more that we drop into our practice as facilitators, oftentimes our personal practice kind of goes to the wayside. And so it can just be so good for self care. Um, so I'm noticing Amelia saying this can be really great for people who are having trouble being embodied. Yeah, a lot of the breath doodle practices are really helpful for coming back into the body because a lot of the focus is on that. Nice. I so appreciate all of your shares. I love all this. And then I'm seeing Cecilia saying, mind is obsessing about making my lines uniform. Yeah, it can, that can be one way to just notice also your inner critic of thinking like, am I making these lines good enough, or they're not turning out or looking the way I would like? And so simply noticing that, offering compassion for yourself, and then continuing on with the practice. But yeah, I don't think you're alone with that also. So we're going to continue on to another practice, which many of you may have already experienced just without the visual element. So I'll kind of talk through it. And Kevin, I love seeing your daughter creating on her board there. So fun. So the next practice we're going to do is for a body scan drawing meditation. So I'd be curious in the chat to hear how many of you have done a simple body scan meditation. So not having visuals, but just doing a body scan meditation. Probably, yeah, I imagine many of you have done that as a practice, which is great because this will be very familiar to you. The key part, I'm going to guide us through a body scan meditation. And then afterward, we'll come back to the page. I want to show a couple of options that you can choose from. So this top left one is a more of a traditional gingerbread person shape. And so any sort of outline that looks sort of like a human figure. So you can imagine whatever you're experiencing in your body scan meditation, that we're then getting some of those things on the page. And kind of the key part is that it doesn't have to be exactly what you experienced. You don't have to choose a color that is the right choice or a shape. It's really just kind of intuitively allowing yourself to choose the colors and shapes, marks, and words that best describe your experience. And so we'll be doing the meditation, then we'll come to the page, and then we'll kind of check back in as we continue to make marks, and I'll guide all of that for us. If you're not feeling drawn to the gingerbread person shape, everyone's different. Sometimes it's easier for people to create in more of an abstract shape. So there are a couple of other options. You can do it in a circle or in the triangle. What I like to imagine is if I'm seated, let's say with my legs crossed, that my head would be this top portion, the chest would be the center portion, and this would be kind of like the infinity shape of my legs in a crossed seated position. So it's up to you, whatever feels like it might be easiest for you to imagine as you're creating on the page. And then the other thing I'll mention as I offer the guided meditation, I'll be mentioning if you happen to notice any colors or shapes in your experience. But I know not everyone visually sees things as they meditate. And so that's absolutely okay if that's you as well. So it can be more of an imaginary process. And so I just always like to mention that before I guide us through. So I'm going to come back on the screen just as I guide us through the meditation, but you want to have your paper ready. And if you want to choose a shape for you to create within, if you want to draw your shape now, that way it's ready and available for you when we finish the meditation. So you kind of don't have to think about that much. So actually, I'm going to draw my shape here with you as well first. So I think today I'm feeling more of a triangular shape. And you can always use printed worksheets if you like, if you'd like this to be more specific. I tend to just freehand draw it, but if you want to continue these practices, you can always have printed worksheets out. So you're welcome for this practice if it feels okay to have your eyes closed. If you'd rather have a soft gaze, you can do that as well, whatever feels best to you. And again, just noticing your breath here first before we really drop into the practice. There's no need to change your breath here. Perhaps being aware of where you're feeling your breath the most in your body right now. And then as you're ready, we'll begin to draw our awareness all the way down to our feet. Perhaps they're resting heavy on the floor, feeling supported. Noticing you may be feeling tingling or a sense of aliveness in your feet. A sense of coolness or warmth. You may even give a little wiggle to your toes, noticing the texture of the fabric or ground as you move your toes. And if you'd like to join me, we'll start to draw our awareness up through the body. So scanning up towards our ankles, moving up towards our calves. Seeing if you can be aware of any sensations you're feeling in your body, and noticing again if you have any distracting thoughts, just returning back to the body. We'll continue to move up towards our knees and thighs, really being curious if you can feel both the front and back body. Perhaps feeling the weight of our legs in our chair. Moving up towards our seat, our lower belly and lower back. You may even notice some movement in your belly from your breath. Seeing how might your belly and low back area feel different than your lower legs and feet. And we'll continue to move up towards our chest area, all the way behind our shoulder blades. Seeing if you can imagine what's the space between your body and the space around you. Moving up towards our shoulders, and like a waterfall, allowing your awareness to move down your arms to your elbows, your forearms, and hands. And our hands have so many nerve endings, they can often be alive with sensation, noticing if you feel tingling or coolness or warmth. And perhaps offering gratitude to our hands that allow us to do so much every day. And we'll move back up our arms to our shoulders, all the way up to your neck. Noticing perhaps if you're holding any tension in your upper shoulders or even in your jaw. Seeing if you can invite softness without needing to change anything. And drawing your awareness all the way to the tip of your nose, seeing if you can make the smallest circle with your nose, or perhaps no one would see externally, but internally you can feel this movement at your nose and even at the base of your skull. And we'll move up towards our eyes to the space between our forehead. And all the way up to the crown of your head, again, perhaps alive with sensation, a space we don't often pay attention to. And then holding your body in full awareness, like a bird's eye view, really feeling into every part of your body here, just noticing if there's something that's asking for your attention. This may be through sensation or through a thought or emotion. And you may even imagine that sensation in your body as having a color or a shape. And there's no right or wrong there, just noticing what you notice. And seeing now if you can locate its opposite in your body. So if you felt red tangled knots in your shoulders, seeing where you may feel cool blue wavy lines in your body. And if nothing arises, that's okay too. Just simply noticing what you notice in this moment. And we'll take 3 breaths here together before returning back to the page. If you'd like to join me, we'll inhale and exhale. You're welcome to let out a sigh or a sound if that feels good. Inhaling and exhaling. And one more breath. And if your eyes were closed, you're welcome to flutter them open as you're ready. And we'll start to come back to our page. And the invitation is to stay as best you can in this state, still noticing your experience while making marks about what you may have felt. And you may add colors or shapes. You might add words if you had thoughts or emotions. And you can also pause at any time and check back in with your body. Seeing as you do this, if you can also still continue to notice the sounds as you create the marks and any other anchor points or cues that you may have. And just trusting whatever marks you're making or your experience is absolutely perfect for you in this moment. And if you'd like to add words, but maybe thoughts or emotions haven't come up yet, I invite you, you can sort of ask a question from your image that you have here on the page. And you can write this anywhere on your paper. So if you'd like to join, the question is, what does my body want me to know today? What does my body want me to know today? And if you wanted to title this experience your meditation or your image, perhaps imagining you were having tea with a friend and you were to bring them only one word about your experience, what is that one word that you would share? And you can title that at the top of your image. And so I'll share what came up for me, and then I'd love to bring it back, open it to the group. You can always spend more time on this later or come back to any of these practices. What came up for me is I tend to hold a lot of tension in my shoulders. So that's what's shown here. And I noticed a lot of coldness all the way in my toes. So, what the words that came to me are this turning inward is a gift. Holding opposites helps you to feel more whole. And my title is Whole and Here. And I'd love to come back to the group and just check in and see what came up for you. And then I also have something else to give you before we go today. But if you'd like to either unmute or you can put in the chat, I'd love to just hear what this experience was like for you, either with that last practice or any of the practices. And these are all things you can continue in your own work, in your own practice. Thank you, Lori. I see your sweet message also. And so no pressure to share. If you'd like to, you're welcome to put it in the chat or
So
open it up
much
to the group.
fun. I now know what I will be doing. No more coloring books for me. I'm good.
Yeah, Lori and I
So,
were talking when we started that coloring books can be so great, but these practices can feel much more personal and
yeah,
more tailored to your own experience. So I'm really happy to hear that.
and not codependent on the coloring books.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Nice. So I love seeing your chats around noticing peace, relaxed, feeling good in your body. Nice. Oh, I see your word as amiga, which I think is friend in Spanish. Um, so no, Graham noticing some mid back pain today. Felt like it could have been represented as a Minecraft TNT block. That's powerful. And some red sharp lines. Chest felt very open and infinite. So I have a large blue Mobius strip in the chest area. I love that. That opposites practice is actually from Yoga Nidra. And I find, especially when I'm dealing with chronic pain or struggling with pain, that holding those opposites is one of the most powerful ways for me to notice what's always constantly shifting in my body. Because when I'm experiencing pain, sometimes I focus only on the pain, which I think can be really common. So I really appreciate that share. So powerful, intuitive, amazing. I love all of that. So I'm going to continue to keep an eye on the chat. I want to put two more gifts in the chat for you and then share how you can continue to work with me if you are interested. So I mentioned the one workbook earlier, which has more mindful art prompts and writing prompts. That's the first workbook. The second workbook is if you are interested in teaching and sharing mindful art and meditation. It has 8 key steps. And then just specifically for our group today, till Friday, so the next 5 days, we're going to be offering 30% off of our core mindful art and meditation teacher training. So it's a 40-hour training that breaks everything down step by step and with our facilitator framework. And I showed probably 1 to 2% of all of the practices today in our time together. So it can be good for your own personal practice or if you also want to share with other people. But similar to other meditation or yoga, there's a process that we take people through. So I wanted to share that also. But before we close for today, I just want to see if there's any other questions or comments or shares. I love that we got to practice today. I love practicing with other meditators that already are deep in your work. You're welcome, Amalia. Thank you, Cecilia. Oh, yes. I'm hearing Shane's question. Does it make you a better artist? I'm so bad, like in the stickman realm. I love this question because I find So many artists that I talk with, even if they get strong technically, also tend to have a very strong inner critic. And so I find it does two things. It helps soften that inner critic so we can create more without judgment. And then the more we create, and then if we are focusing on techniques as well, then we also become a better artist technique wise. So it kind of, it's a two-in-one. It works for both things. Do you have advice for anybody with dexterity issues? It definitely makes a difference with the type of materials that you're using. So I mentioned earlier, like ripping paper instead of using scissors. A lot of times it can be helpful to use wider utensils if you struggle with dexterity. And then also I think just giving yourself grace and compassion for, maybe your particular lines aren't going to be as specific, and that's absolutely okay. So I think it can be a practice and acceptance as well. But yeah, there's lots of ways you can modify. I love all of this. Yeah, it's great for psychotherapy, using it with, if someone is a licensed practitioner, to share with clients as well. Yeah, and not alone of being critical of your art today. That's totally very human. Um, Nice. I'm so great. Thank you for all of the appreciations. I love that. And it's my passion to share this work in the world, to offer another kind of path into meditation, to add it into your tool belt. So I'm so grateful you're open to experimenting, and this well goes very deep. There's lots of different ways to explore. Some of the other practices also go much deeper into identifying different emotions that you're having, and then having some transformation around that too. But you don't have to be an artist, which is really great. So I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, especially also Kevin and Lori, for having me. And I'll come back to you and see if you have anything else you want to share or ask before we close.
That
I
was
have,
so much fun. I'm sorry,
okay,
I interrupt.
no, my fault. I had a quick question about the workbook that you were offering, because I was trying to scroll through the chat. Is there another
Yeah.
place that we can access it so I don't have to try to find it in there?
Yes. So if you go to my website, mindfulcreativemuse.com, and then into my store, all of my free offerings actually are at the bottom of that. And then I'll put in the chat one link that kind of has all the links. So if
Great.
you click on that link, it'll all be there for you.
Okay, I'll save that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Keep it simple. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for spending your Saturday with me. Or if you're watching the replay, also, if you ever have just questions and want to reach out, you're welcome. I have a contact form on my website, and I hope to stay connected. But it was really nice to spend time with you and to share some of these practices with you today.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. That was
Thank you.
beautiful. Sky had a good time too.
Good.
Better. Though she didn't want to draw the emotions on the people. She just wanted to add ears and things like that. But
Cute.
yeah, but she did the line practices, and she didn't. It was a little hard to do the forward thinking and backward thinking thoughts for her,
Yeah.
but she had a good time, and I think this is a wonderful practice for anybody, whether it's like adults or kids or seniors or whoever wants to practice. So thank you for being here, Cynthia. Thank you everybody else for being here, for joining. It's always wonderful to see your faces. Next week, we have our regular Sunday Sangha with breakout rooms and teaching practice, getting to know each other and gaining strength from being together on this path of making the world a happier and more peaceful place through meditation. So this is another tool today that we've learned to be able to add to our tool belt, and it's a really wonderful tool. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I hope you all have a beautiful day. And if anybody wants to call out anything before we go, let me know. If anybody has anything that they wanted to say or ask. Oh, hey, I see there's another kid in there. Oh, she's showing her painting. Look, there's a kid showing her painting. Oh, wait, where'd it go? Oh, she was over there. Look, there's a kid there. Yeah. Wow, what a beautiful painting. Very nice.
I have one question.
Mhm. Go
I
ahead.
missed it. I was in the zone and I missed it. What was, when we were doing the lines, what did the circle represent? Like a pause in your thought, or like when you got distracted? Was that what the circle was?
The circle is really, sometimes I've had students say, I'm not sure if my thought is about the future or past. I just kind of noticed it was a thought or even a distraction, like I heard a truck go by. And so it's just another option to mark that you weren't on the line as a visual cue. Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't want to ask that. I was like, oh, I missed a really important part of that. Thank you. That was
You're
great.
welcome.
I learned a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, and I see Kevin, your daughter too, is holding up her image.
Yeah, Sky showing the stuff she drew on the man or the person.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's beautiful, Sky. I love it.
yeah. My word was wowza. That's how I was feeling.
Nice. I love that we had kiddos join us today too, and that we could bring in the full circle. That's really beautiful. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I hope that you all have a beautiful Sunday, and I'll see you next week for our Sunday Sangha. See you. Bye, everyone. Oh, yeah.